Helen Carter had always been a strong, independent woman. At 73, she lived alone in a modest yet charming two-bedroom house on the outskirts of Springfield, Missouri. Her silver-gray hair was always neatly combed, and she took great pride in keeping her home tidy and warm. Her late husband, James, had passed away 5 years ago, and since then, she'd learned how to manage things on her own, paying bills online, keeping track of her medications, and video calling her daughter, Rachel, in California. But life in old age wasn't as simple or peaceful as it looked from the outside. Beneath the quiet afternoons with tea and the sweet scent of gardenias from her flower bed, danger lurked. Not the kind with shadows in the dark, but the kind that wears a smile and knocks on your door in broad daylight. It began one Thursday morning when Helen received a call from someone claiming to be from her bank. The man on the line was polite, spoke with a calm and respectful tone, and even knew the last 4 digits of her account number. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "we've detected some suspicious activity on your account. For your safety, we'll need to verify your identity and secure your funds immediately." Helen, trusting and unaware of the modern tricks played on seniors, complied. She gave him the information he asked for. After all, he was from the bank, he said so. He guided her through transferring her savings to a safe account, promising the money would be returned once the investigation was over. But the money never came back. When Rachel called later that evening, Helen hesitated before confessing what happened. Rachel's voice changed instantly, no longer light and chatty, but tight with concern. "Mom, that wasn't the bank. That was a scam." And just like that, Helen's sense of control over her world cracked. Nearly $18,000 of her life savings gone. Her trust shattered. Rachel flew in the next morning, comforting her mother and helping file a police report, but deep down, they both knew the money was gone for good. That was only the beginning. Within weeks, Helen began to notice subtle changes in her environment. One day, the gardener, someone James had hired for years, overcharged her for basic work. Another day, her pharmacist gave her the wrong medication dosage. A door-to-door home maintenance specialist offered to inspect her roof for free, but ended up charging her $1,200 for repairs that weren't needed. Each time, Helen felt a little more ashamed, a little more powerless. She had never imagined that growing old would come with such relentless tests of judgment. Rachel, determined to protect her mother, helped install security cameras, labeled all of Helen's medications, and insisted she call before making any financial decision. But Rachel had her own family to tend to, her husband, her job, and 2 teenage boys, and couldn't be there all the time. That's when Tom Mitchell, a neighbor Helen had known for years, started coming over more often. A widower in his late 60s with a soft voice and kind eyes, Tom began offering to pick up groceries, help with errands, and join her for tea. He seemed safe. Familiar. "Just looking out for you, Helen," he would say with a gentle smile. At first, it was comforting. Someone to talk to. Someone who understood. But soon, Tom started leaving subtle hints about how lonely he was, about how expensive everything had gotten, about how hard life could be when you're older and on your own. Then, one day, while helping her fix a light bulb in the kitchen, he brought it up. "You know, Helen, I was thinking maybe we could move in together. Share the bills. Look after each other. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I could protect you." Helen paused. Her instincts flickered, uncertain. Part of her longed for companionship. Another part remembered the growing list of times she'd been taken advantage of. Still, she agreed to think about it. That night, she didn't sleep. Her heart ached from the loneliness, but her mind was sharp. She began thinking more deeply. How many older people like her had fallen victim not just to strangers, but to those closest to them? She started reading articles online, watching videos, and even joined a virtual support group for seniors who had experienced elder abuse. What she learned was staggering. It wasn't always strangers who caused harm. In many cases, it was family members, caregivers, neighbors, people who wore kindness like a mask while slowly eroding trust, finances, independence, and health. One woman in her support group, Marlene from Texas, shared how her own son had convinced her to sign over her property. Another, Charles from Ohio, revealed how his nephew had gained power of attorney under false pretenses and drained his account. These weren't isolated stories. They were patterns, stories of neglect, financial manipulation, and emotional blackmail. Stories like Helen's. She realized that being careful in old age wasn't just about locking your doors or taking your meds on time. It was about protecting your dignity, your voice, and your right to live with peace and autonomy. So Helen made a decision. The next time Tom came over, she greeted him warmly, but with a firmness in her tone that surprised even herself. "Tom, I appreciate everything you've done, but I need space. I'm capable, and I'd like to keep it that way. Let's stay neighbors, but please don't involve yourself in my personal affairs." Tom looked startled. A flash of irritation crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with a polite nod. "Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable." That night, Helen felt lighter than she had in months. She wasn't rude, she was clear. She wasn't ungrateful, she was protecting herself. Rachel was proud of her mother's courage. Together, they created a list of trusted contacts, set up two-step verification on all her accounts, and scheduled weekly check-ins. Helen even signed up for a community group that helped seniors learn technology skills and recognize red flags in common scams. Slowly, Helen regained her sense of empowerment. One day, while hosting a meeting of her senior support circle at her house, Helen stood in her living room, surrounded by a dozen others, and said something that stuck with everyone. "Growing older doesn't mean becoming weaker, but it does mean we must be wiser. Trust is earned, not assumed. And your safety, your well-being, is worth standing up for, even if it means saying no to people who seem nice. You've got one life. Guard it like treasure." Everyone clapped. Helen didn't see herself as a victim anymore. She was now a voice, a guide, and perhaps most importantly, a survivor who turned her pain into wisdom. She still missed James, still had days when her knees ached and her memory faltered. But now, she also had purpose. She began volunteering for a hotline that supported elderly victims of scams and abuse. She shared her story with local groups, even appearing on a local news segment about financial abuse in seniors. Her story became a wake-up call not just for older adults, but for their families. Rachel, inspired by her mother's strength, started a nonprofit initiative called Golden Shield to provide digital literacy classes and legal advice for the elderly. The first workshop, held in Springfield Community Hall, had over 60 attendees. Helen sat in the front row, her silver-gray hair shining under the lights, a notebook in her lap, and a knowing smile on her face. The truth had shocked her, but it also awakened her. Now, she was on a mission to help others be careful,